How have you been since the last time we talked?
I think the last time it was for Fallen Sanctuary, right?
Virtual Symmetry, actually.
Ah, for virtual. No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, in these last months, I did tons of stuff, and I'm quite busy nowadays because the promotion of the new Temperance, also the new Serenity album. But it's going great, I have to say. We are receiving a fantastic feedback for Hermitage, so very, very cool. I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, and you've been keeping yourself really busy since the last time we talked.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
in this seventh album, I mean, Hermitage, Daruma's Eyes Part Two, it's your probably the highest point of your career so far. I mean, it's a monstrous album, like both lyrically, musically, and also visually. What made you embrace this huge ordeal?
First of all, thank you so much, and you said right so far because hopefully the next album will be even better.
Yeah.
But let's see. No, I'm very proud about Hermitage because I worked so hard about this album during the last year. Um, and for the first time, I produced the entire album by myself. Uh, I used to produce the album with Michele for the last albums of Temperance, but for this one, I did it by myself. And I don't know, it was a totally different process because, it's the first concept album of the band. That's the reason why also the songwriting process was totally different. Basically, I start to write every track with a piano instead of guitar, and that's the
Mhm.
first time for me. I know that pianist at all, but at least I thought for this album had to be more dramatic and also even epic and symphonic. That's the reason why we work with Daniele Mazza from Ancient Bars about orchestration.
Yeah, and how have the reactions been so far?
So far, so good. I mean, tons of people, fans, but also journalists all over the world said this is our best album so far again. And it's a little bit different than the previous albums, I have to say. And also, this is
Yeah.
the feedback I received because, it's more, I would say, mature, but at the same time, sorry, fast fashion music. I don't know if I can say something like that, but I mean, uh, you need more time to understand properly this album because, um, first of all, it's a very long album, 14 tracks, more than 1 hour of music, and some difficult tracks, some very long tracks. But yes, as I said before, the reaction so far is amazing.
Yeah, and it should be because it's really a great album. And
So much.
lyrically, it follows the story of Daruma's Eyes Part One, which was the closing act of Jupiter and Moons. Why did you decide to follow up on that story?
So basically, when we wrote the Rumor Size Part One, we're supposed to release basically the entire concept of the track the entire story basically in one single track. But then we thought, okay, maybe it's too complicated, too many informations to put in one single track. That's the reason why we call this one the Rumor Size Part One. And basically, in the first chapter, we the of this Japanese doll, the Daruma one, and that's it. And we thought, okay, maybe just a sort of introduction for the real concept album, basically like Dream Theater did for
Yeah.
Scenes from Memory. For sure, we are not Dream Theater, but I mean, basically they did the same. They released Metropolis Part One, and then I think six 6 years later they released Metropolis Part Two, Scenes from Memory. We did the same. So for this album, um, we we followed every chapter of the story I wrote, and for sure during the years the story changed a little bit, but I add even more details for this album for the story, And during the last 2 or 3 years, I collect tons of ideas for this album because it's totally different the songwriting process. Because for a normal, I would say normal new album, you'll put some new tracks, the tracks you like more, and that's it. But for this album as concept, we have to follow the story. There are tons of connection between every track. You can also hear some vocal lines or some riff or some orchestration taken from the Roma Size Part 1. And it was not so easy to write this one. But yes, basically in the second chapter you can you can read the entire story also from the book.
Yeah, and when you wrote Daruma's Eyes Part 1, you already knew you wanted to make a full album for Daruma's Eyes Part 2.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Because as I said before, it was quite impossible to try to put the entire story in just one track. And that's the reason why we called back then in 2018, we called this one the Roma Sides Part 1. And for tons of years, some diehard fans of Temperance asked us about a part 2. And here we are.
Yeah, and maybe will be a part 3 as well, or this is the end of the story.
So if you will listen the album properly, you will notice that there's not a the end is totally open. So first of all, it's a little bit brutal, but depends by the feedback by the album, and honestly, also by the inspiration. But I really would love to record also part 3.
Yeah, and I think that would be a great idea. Now, which chapters of the story are told in this album?
Which what? Sorry.
Which chapters of the story? What the part that you told here?
Um, I mean, mm, in this album, there is a full story, but at the end of the last track, Cliff, um, there is a sort of open ending because something will happen. I don't want to spoil too much now, but something will happen, but there's still something to say, and
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah, and there's also a book that tells the full tale. When and why did you decide to create that?
I mean, when I wrote the story of the album, we didn't supposed to release a book as well, but then the people close to the band say you have to sell this one. Diehard fans will go crazy, and honestly, I think it was a very good idea at the end.
Yeah, it definitely was. Now, moving on for the musical part, you already saw that your composition process was completely different to this album than it was to the other ones. And this album includes some of your most ambitious compositions. Were you aiming for
Thank
that when
you.
you started writing them?
I mean, there are at least three very long tracks in this album. First of all, Hero Reborn is a sort of tribute from myself to Sabotage. Sabotage is one of my favorite bands ever, and mm, and also for the track number 10, Into the Void. I think maybe this is the most ambitious track because it's very gentle and proggy, and we never did a song like that before. And I would say that's the reason why other members of the bands really love this one. And third one, the last track of the album, Cliff. I think this is the longest track of the album, is more than 8 minutes, and
And
it's
also one
the
of the
perfect.
also one of the longest tracks of your career as well.
I think so. Could be, could be. But then it's the perfect way to end the album because um, we put tons of different influences in this track, and I think for the first time in Temperance we put some meatloaf influence because I mean the last chorus and also the break in the middle of the track is very meatloaf oriented.
Yeah, and maybe that and the Meatloaf and the Savatage influence came from this time that you wrote with the keyboard. instead of the
Sure,
guitar.
exactly.
That's probably what did it. Now, this album is also the first for Christian Starkey. How hard was it to
Yes.
find the replacement for Alessia?
It was a totally random thing, honestly, because I met Christine the first time 4 years ago on the 70,000 tons of metal cruise in Miami. And then we were in touch for a while, but that's it. We never talk about the chance to collaborate or to do something together, to write something together. Um, and then I think the same day our previous singer called me to say, you know, Marco, I don't want to tour anymore. I found on I think on YouTube a video with Christine singing "Cry Out for a Hero" from Beast in Black, and since I'm a big fan of Beast in Black, I was speechless, extremely impressed, and I thought was the right person at the right moment, and I think uh, we were extremely lucky because during these 10 or 15 years, I collaborated with tons of different singers all over the world, but I still think that Tristan probably she's the best singer I ever met. But please don't tell her.
I won't only if she watches the video.
No,
Yeah,
no, no,
but
just kidding, just kidding.
and it's fun that because she's your first ever international member, I think, right?
It is. You're right. But the crazy thing is, mm, tons of crazy stuff in this album because first of all, she's our she's the first member of the band not from Italy. She's from New York, and the main character of the album is from New York. This guy called Victor. But I wrote the story of the album. I finished to write the story of the album at least 1 hour, 1 year before Kristen joined the band. So it's a crazy connection.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. But I must say, you made a great choice. I mean, she did a great job on this album.
Thank you. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and you also have some guests in this album. Can you present them to us?
Sure. Uh, since the concept album, so since I really love some concept album like the first Avantasia Metal Opera One, with tons of different characters, and it means tons of different singers. We try to do the same for this album. So since we have 6 characters, we have 6 singers, not only Christy, Michele, and me, but also Laura Fella from Faun. And in the album, she is Diane, this special and fantastic creature from Hermitage with tons of powers inside of her. And then we have Fabienne Erni from Helvetie, and she's this beautiful girl from Hermitage called Anisha. And last but not least, we have this crazy guy, this crazy old guy from Hermitage. He's called Aramon, but and mm, alias Alessandro Conti. And Alessandro is one of my best friends in music business since 15 years ago, I think. And then we have also a narrator on this album. Mm, one of my personal heroes, Ariel Lucasen from Aerion. And I was extremely excited when Arian accepted my call.
Yeah, and he also made a great job. And you also in the previous interviews we had, you also said that you are a massive Avantasia fan, and this album really
Yes.
shows that. This album really shows a lot of Avantasia vibes as well. Not only with the different
Oh, thank
singers,
you.
also with the narrations and everything. And by inviting those other singers, I mean, I think you really reached a new level. Do you agree with me? Do you think like they were up to your expectations?
Um, I don't know because honestly, we decided to call first of all singers from our generation. So Fabienne, she's a little bit younger than me. I think Laura and me, we have the same age. Alessandro is a little bit older. They are fantastic singers, and we decided to call some of the best singers in the scene, honestly. And by the way, thank you so much for the stuff you said about this album and Avantasia, because as you know, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, yeah, as well as of Dream Theater that you mentioned earlier. Also,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, all of those little dots connect when you listen to the album. Now, the artwork to this album is also an absolute masterpiece. Can you tell us who was responsible for it?
A fantastic artist called Giada Belviso. Uh, she lives not so far from me and from Luca, and she's an amazing and talented artist. And most important thing for me, she's a fantastic human being. And we thought to collaborate for tons of years, and then her time has come because for a concept album and a fantasy story like this, I think she was the perfect person. And tons of people uh, are saying this is the best Temperance album so far.
Yeah, it definitely is. And what guidelines did you gave her, for her to come up with this incredible artwork?
Um, First of all, we thought about some connection between this album and Jupiter because the planets, and um, also the Earth orbits the Sol because if you will check the colors of the album are pretty similar. Then I gave her the story of the album. I sent her some demos to catch the mood, basically. And we decided to put some elements of the album in the cover artwork. For example, um, you can for sure you can see the doll, the Ruma in the album in the cover artwork, sorry, but also the special creator Diane is a moth, basically. Then for sure, Victor, the back of Victor, I have to say. And then this special world with planets and the angels of this village, Hermitage. Also, the character of Christine, uh, uh, Irene. And then in the back, I think so far no one noticed, but if you take a look properly to the cover art, you will be able to see also my eyes because I'm the villain of the story. And in the back of the entrance of the village, there are my eyes.
Yeah, I don't think anyone noticed that yet. That's a real Easter
Exactly.
egg.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, moving on from Temperance to your other projects. Right now, you are touring solo. How is that going?
So far, so good. I mean, for a lot of a lot of time, I would say a lot of years, some people here and there ask me to do something as solo artist in acoustic or something like that. And then in September, I start to play some shows over Europe, and then I received this proposal to join Joe Orchestra and Brandon Gibbs to do this tour as solo artist, and it's pretty cool. I have to say I'm enjoying every single day, and I think in the future, uh, depends by my schedule, but I will try to play more shows like this.
Yeah, and probably the acoustic shows you made with Fallen Sanctuary are also a great part to make
Sure,
you.
sure,
Yeah.
sure, exactly.
Yeah, and besides that, you are keeping yourself really busy. Besides Temperance, you are also the guitar player for Serenity, and their new album, Nana
Yes.
DJD, will be released on early November. What can you reveal to us about that album?
So just one thing, first of all, I think I have just a couple of minutes left because then I have to do the sound check. But then,
Okay,
so about
I'm almost over as
Serenity,
well. So.
okay, okay, cool. So about Serenity, we started this sort of collaboration about songwriting, I think 5 years ago. And then when we start to Yes, yes, I'm coming. And then when we start to work on the new album, I think I wrote 3, 4, 5 tracks for the upcoming Nemesis album. And then they asked me to join the band, and it was quite natural, I have to say.
Yeah, and you already made some shows with them, and I heard they were pretty great.
Yes, great. And I can wait to do the next shows in October, November, and February.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a
Thank you
great
so much.
show.